Welcome to On the Edge with Deneen Dias. Today, I am thrilled to be talking with Donny. We've been preparing for our 30 minutes today. We've got just so many things to talk about. But first, Donny, would you please introduce yourself?
Sure, and thanks for having me. Donny Shimamoto. So I am a CPA, but I consider myself a non-traditional CPA because the focus of what I do is in the innovation space. So there's kind of two kind of things I think about that as. One is the innovation itself, which is people often think technology, but often with technology comes different business practices, which I think we're going to talk about a lot today. So changes and innovations in business practices. Then the counter side to that, though, or the balancing side to that, is risk management, which is in the technology space, it would be cybersecurity. In the business practices, there's a tons of other internal controls and other things that we would look at. So we bring the blend of the two. And often I'm essentially in an outsourced CIO role. And I think of CIO as Chief Innovation Officer, although we will overlook like all the rest of the technology and the IT stack and everything else going on in a firm.
I want to dig into that a little bit, Donny, because I've been working with firms for about 13 to 14 years, and I would say I started noticing about 3, maybe 4 years ago that some of the larger firms were creating that role. And I never really saw a firm have a chief innovation officer before. And people don't think of firms as being innovative. So the fact that some of the larger firms were creating this role and bringing people in as CIOs, when I would find that person at a firm, I would really love working with them because they were future thinking. They were open to technology. And a lot of times through the years, I would find those people kind of struggle because they would make recommendations at the firm and the firm wouldn't implement all the things that they were trying to do, or it's just a struggle. So at you being that outsourced CIO, I'd love that a firm can use, right? I'd love to just have you dig into what you're seeing and how you're helping firms make that change.
Sure. I think the biggest thing is that firms are graduating, I would think of it as from the infrastructure, which is the servers and the networking, and even the simple things like how do I use Office 365, really to where they need to understand the services, the accounting services that are being delivered. So the biggest place that we see CIOs fail is that they're focused on the technology and they don't understand enough about like how audit, tax, or bookkeeping is actually being done. And so that's where I come in, is really having that understanding both of the infrastructure layer, but really understanding, okay, what is the services we're delivering? How are we delivering that services? And probably most important, especially if it's a CPA firm, is what are the standards that we actually have to follow to comply professionally and deliver the service, according to our standards. But really it's bringing the whole set together and understanding what you can and also what you can't do. Because again, understand there's limitations on what we can do.
For sure. Yeah. So then you find that you're more effective because you understand accounting and you understand the firm and you understand kind of where firms are at in all of the transition, like big picture. And so, I wanted to switch over to something that you talk about and you think about and you work with firms on, and it's bookkeeping, automation, and outsourcing. And so when you are working with firms on that accounting side, right, and that diving, because that's obviously where Botkeeper fits, that's what I think about a lot, right, is how you in that CIO space are helping firms on that bookkeeping, automation, and outsourcing space.
So really what we're doing is helping them think through how they want, one is how they want to do it. There's a lot of different approaches in how you want to deliver the services, what type of patterns you want to follow. The other one is really helping them evaluate their tech stack. So what we'll do is we'll come in, what are the different applications you're using, how do they all work together? So we have what we call our Intraprise blueprint for accounting services. That is it's a model that we use, and we have the blueprint trademarked, where we can come and evaluate all the different areas that you might be working with a client on, and then identify opportunity. Well, you're not working in this area, like timekeeping. You're only doing payroll, so have you considered timekeeping here of apps that perhaps integrate with your preferred payroll provider? So we look at that piece, and then we also look that's the technology innovation. Then we also look at other, like I mentioned, business practices innovations. So has the firm, for example, adopted value pricing or price pricing, so that when you automate and you get things more efficient, that you're able to keep the profit margin higher? Because if you're still billing based on the hour, it's going to take less time for your staff to do stuff. So you're actually going to lose revenue and lose profit if you don't apply fixed pricing, at least, to what you're doing. And then looking also broader at how does bookkeeping fit into the greater practice management of the firm? That's probably one of the biggest things I get asked to do, is to figure out, well, this CAS is different than audit and tax. And so how do I actually deal with that and pull that into my practice management system, which is designed for audit and tax engagements?
We could probably have a whole chat just about that because that's where I see firms get stuck, is they automate more, right? They don't want to charge less. And so how can they have this be the revenue generator that we're seeing firms really, charge a lot for this as they move more into advisory in this client accounting space. But I've been traveling a bit at conferences, and the thing that I've been hearing the most is that firms are struggling with even thinking about all of those changes because they're at capacity. And they just are drowning right now in the work. They can't hire enough people. There's no one to hire. Their team are leaving, so they're at capacity. And so I've been hearing a lot about that. Talent is such a challenge that firms are starting to outsource because they have to do something, right? They're not ready to fulfill their clients, and they can't focus on automating because they're looking at outsourcing. And I know you're looking into this and you're doing some research on this, which I'd love for you to share, because I think it's your thinking, and you tell me it's automate first and then outsource. And I feel like a lot of firms are outsourcing. So can you just share in this mind, in this thinking, where you're at, and bring some of your knowledge to this important discussion?
Sure. Excuse me. So yeah, this is a chicken and the egg, right? I don't have time. So if I don't have time, do I have time to actually think properly about my automation and how I want to automate? Or do I have time to think how I would train up another staff? And part of it becomes the evaluation of what it actually makes more sense given the type of work you're doing, the type of clients you're doing. So part of it is figuring out which opportunity is actually better to do first. There's not necessarily a right answer. It depends on the firm, it depends on the client, it depends on whether, for example, like with outsourcing, because you're going to have to train the incoming staff, whether the person that's leading the CAS practice is actually good at training, or is part of the problem that everything's in their head. And so maybe first we need to actually look at the process and map stuff out and figure out, because I think that's one of the biggest things with outsourcing, is that you need to have a process in place, because you need to train someone that's not sitting right next to you, that you can go, wait, change, do this instead. Right? You need to be able to communicate with them and have a defined workflow around this is who's doing what and when. I think that's important.
That's so important. And we're seeing that at Botkeeper is, a lot of the firms, so we consider ourselves to be outsourcing alternative. And as we are the technology and the talent, but we really are the technology, and we have a platform in this accounting space. It's really great. But we're signing up about a firm a day because we are solving a problem. There is a real issue right now in this space. So we're having a lot of successes with getting firms interested in getting started with us. Where they get stuck is we make them put a process in place, right? We put a playlist with them for each client. And if they stick with us, they end up liking it, because you have to standardize. You have to have that process. You need that playlist. But they haven't done it yet. And so it takes time. So that process piece is so important. And if what I'm hearing you say is that's important before you outsource too? Is that, or you know, is that what I'm hearing you say?
Completely. I mean, the way I think of it is when you, well, first in the tech space, you have a bad process and you automate a bad process, you've got a process that is much more efficient, much more, maybe not effective, but much more efficient at garbage in. And if your
Yeah,
old, I should say, if your old process was garbage in and garbage out, your new process is garbage in, much more efficient, lots of garbage out a lot faster, right? That's like automating a bad process. Now, take it and make it where you're working with someone that's outside of your office, whether it's actually even a remote staff, an onshore outsourcer, or an offshore outsourcer, even worse, you have time zone challenges. Now, if you can't sync up and know who's doing what or what's happening when and have the communication in a structured way, like it's just chaos because it's the right hand not talking to the left and they're on different time zones and they're working separately. It just becomes a huge issue.
yeah, yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's tough. Well, you're right. And I have heard firms say that they've started, you know, outsourcing and it's been a challenge. And I think it's the same kind of challenge they experience even with working with us is, except for we are a little more like process driven. Like we have to put that playlist in place. And
Yeah,
again, if they push through with us and get that playlist in place per client, they actually like it, right? Because as you standardize, that
yeah.
allows for, you know, the lift and then that allows for the growth. Um, but, you know, maybe we can take a step back and can you share how you define outsourcing? Because it's not necessarily offshoring. So can you kind of share your
Sure.
thoughts on how you define outsourcing to begin with? Because I think different people define it sort of different ways.
Well, I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions. So I think a lot of people, when they hear outsourcing, it automatically means offshoring. And we go back to the first wave of outsourcing, which actually occurred in the IT space, and a lot of that was offshoring. A lot of it went to India. And actually, what we talked about in this whole process piece a little earlier is actually a lesson learned from that one. At that time, there was this whole concept of CMM, capabilities maturity model, where in the IT space we saw where if the IT processes were not mature, there was a failure working with offshoring. Well, that's going to be true in any case when you outsource something. And so outsourcing can be offshoring. It can also be onshore. And so it just depends on who you're working with. And I also think it's interesting that earlier you mentioned Botkeeper as an outsourcing. Did I hear you say outsourcing alternative, right? Because I actually don't think of you guys as that. I actually think of you guys as more the tech side.
Right.
And then I know that sometimes it's like, is there, but it's AI, it's bots that are coming and doing things. And what I think a lot of people don't realize though is that AI and bots needs people, one,
Right.
to tell it how to operate and to figure out what you need the bot to do, but then
Right.
two, to provide base data. If there isn't base data, to provide the data for the bots to learn from or the AI to learn from. And so I know you guys have a component of people that
Right.
actually help to do this and to help customize it for every client and to help figure it out until there's enough data to create that critical mass that AI can take over. So I don't even think of you guys really in the outsourcing space because I think for true success for firms in this area, it's technology plus
Right.
outsourcing, and
Right.
it's really you need both, and having one or only one or only the other, you'll have some success. You definitely will, but you're not going to have full success until you actually do both.
I agree. And I think it's hard for Botkeeper because we don't really fit in any bucket, right? We're kind of unique because of that AI piece. And with Botkeeper, you get our tech and talent, which I think is crucial because our talent knows how to work with the bots and
Hmm.
they're trained to work with the machine. And so you get efficiencies right? You get standardization, and you get speed, because we have so much data in this space. Our
Yeah.
machines have seen most of these transactions, right? And that's how you get to the accuracy. So with us, the unique piece is the AI, but you also get our talent that is in the Philippines, which is why our price is so affordable, because you are getting the marriage of the
Yeah.
tech and the talent. So I think we want to, it's a hard conversation for us to have, because we don't want to be, we're not really outsourcing in that way,
Yeah.
but we can solve some of the problems that firms are turning to with trying to outsource. So I like how you talk about it. And I also kind of think, like, you talk about, you know, in this bookkeeping space, automate and outsource, right? So that automation piece is, I agree with you, really where I think firms should start. And that automation causes the processes to be put in place and the efficiency. So you have like a thinking around this, like the 8 keys to success. And I read some of it, but I'd love for you to share what your #1 key is.
So the #1 key is appointing a chief automation officer. And so this is someone that is dedicated to looking at what you're trying to automate, and really it's ensuring the success. So where are you hitting roadblocks? What are the issues that are coming up? But on the positive side, where are the successes? Because we want to replicate success, or we want to figure out why, for example, are these 3 other people not using the automation or failing, but this one is successful. If we can figure out why this one is successful, maybe we can trickle that over to the others. And this chief automation officer also is the one that is tasked with kind of taking a step back whenever things occur and looking at the big picture. Are we moving in the right direction? What is the root cause of the challenge? Not just going, oh, it's not working, let me give up, right? Mm-hmm. And so this is the person that really has to keep things moving forward, because there's going to be roadblocks, there's going to be issues, and someone needs to figure out how do you overcome them. And it can't be someone that's stuck in the day-to-day, because if they're busy all the time, and I'm not saying that they can't have some client service, they just need to not have as much client service responsibilities, because otherwise they're going to get stuck. I got to get this report out, I got to do this, I got to do that, compared to how do we keep this moving forward? How do I work with, whether it's Botkeeper or whatever, other vendors that might be coming into play, how do I work with the vendors to resolve the issues and continue to move forward? So very critical role.
I couldn't agree more. And as I've worked with firms, I've looked for that person, and I've tried to really support that person to be successful. 9 times out of 10, that person has a book of business, and this is a side job. Yeah. And so they get beaten down, right? And they don't have the time to really commit to it. So, have you had success with talking to leadership to say, hey, free up this person's time? Yes, it's an investment in your talent, to be able to push through, and the person has to be tenacious, right? To push through, to see what's working, to see what's not working, because it's not always perfect, right? It's like try, tweak, try, tweak, try, tweak. So have you had success with leadership, freeing that person's time up when you work with firms and consult with firms?
So I'm gonna say yes in general, and I say yes in general because sometimes it's a matter of things failing. So I can come in and I can say you really need to sign this person, and then for example they say, okay, well, I'll sign so and so, and they really won't. They won't free up the schedule, and then I have to come back and say, because they'll come back and they'll say, well, it's not working, and I say, well, from what so and so is telling me, you haven't freed up his or her time, and they're still busy, and so I'm trying to help them understand what's going on. So even if I'm working in parallel with them, right, it has to be someone in the firm that has to own this and has to drive it through, because otherwise, even if for me, someone that knows this, that knows all the best practices, I'm not part of that firm.
Right.
And I don't deal with the politics, and I'm not dealing with everything else that's coming along. And that person is that person that has to own it.
For sure. Good. Well, I like that's your #1 key. And I also, through working with you and talking with you, I like that you're digging into this more. So you are doing some surveys and some research, and I'd love for you to share, what's to come around that from you.
Sure. We just realized as we were starting to look at this, because this whole concept really is coming to the fore with the staffing shortage that everyone is experiencing, and with the craziness of the coronavirus and the PPPs and everything, it's become even more prevalent. And as I started to research, so what are we actually seeing? What are firms doing? What are actually, and I should caveat that, what are successful firms doing? I found out that there really is not a lot of research in this area.
I
And
agree.
so I'm actually partnering with a professor from Northern Illinois University, and we are actually designing a research study that is looking at, one, are firms using outsourcing? Two, if they're not, why are they not? Where are they hitting kind of this roadblocks? Because I think a lot of it's what we talked about today.
Mhm.
If they are using outsourcing, kind of what are the successful strategies? We're actually working with multiple vendors, including Botkeeper has agreed to participate as well, like to talk to their successful customers to say, what are you doing and why are you successful? So we're going to be looking at that. And then the thing that I think is really differentiating our research, though, is we're also looking at, so now you've saved all this time or gained all these efficiencies. What are you doing with that time?
Good.
So are they having staff spend more time with clients? Are they having staff do more business development? Are they having staff do more upskilling so that their teams are ready to use AI and RPA and all this other stuff? Like what are successful firms actually doing with this? So we're
Good.
going to launch it this fall. So I'm really excited, and I'm hoping everyone listening, as well as anyone that may be interested, comes and participates, so we can really start to understand the space and have some good, solid research, not anecdotal
Right.
stories that really say this is what successful firms do.
I'm interested. I can't wait to see the findings. And obviously, the more firms that participate, the more we can learn together. Because I agree with you. It's like, last week I was talking to somebody about, automating, and they're like, "Oh, Deneen, if we automated with Botkeeper, then we'd have to fire all of our staff." And I'm like, "No, no, 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 no,
No,
no,
yeah,
no, no. Like, the whole goal is to give your staff some chance to do other things, to do more, to talk to clients more, to do more advisory. Like, it's just giving them more technology to be able to do more. It's like, you know, giving them a computer. Well, now you're giving them bots.
yeah,
You didn't fire people when you gave them computers. Like, it's more technology to allow people to be able to do the really cool stuff that they are too busy doing the mundane stuff to get to. So, having research that can speak to how firms are repurposing their people. And can you give us a peek kind of what you're hearing?
sure. So this is where I might actually adjust what you said. So you said Botkeeper's technology plus talent. I would
Yeah,
actually think of it as a Botkeeper's technology plus teachers, those that teach the bots and teach the AI,
yeah,
because the talent is actually in the firm. And the question is, what talent do you have in the firm? Is it someone that can do business development, right? So that would be one. Another thing that we're actually hearing, which is interesting, is some outsourcers are telling me, well, what they're seeing is once the outsourcing, not even the technology, just the outsourcing is there, taking care of the mundane, like you said,
yeah.
the in-house staff actually gets promoted faster because they're able to demonstrate senior or manager level capabilities. Not because they didn't have them, it's because they never had the opportunity. They were stuck doing all this mundane work, but
Yeah.
now that that's all done for them, and I think of it as the pyramid, 80% of the work is just getting data ready. 20% is getting the insights and really figuring out, why is this meaningful? How do I help advise the client? If the in-house staff can put that 80% over, whether it's Botkeeper or an outsourcer, to then say, okay, now let's take the talent and really have the talent focus on this 20%, get the insights, work with the client, help the client be more successful, you are going to see more advancement in the staff, and not just the staff, your firm, because your firm's going to get known as, yeah, they really helped me understand my business and help me be more successful, help me get through the pandemic, help me thrive, not just survive. Right? Those are all the reasons why we're here as accountants.
Right. I agree. I can't wait to learn more. I think this is a really important survey that you're doing, and I think there's a lot of misconceptions in all of this. And it's like, I kind of go back to when I started working with firms in the cloud. The cloud is such a fuzzy wuzzy word. Like, what does a cloud mean, right? And it's the same thing with outsourcing. It's a kind of fuzzy word. What does it mean? The same thing with AI. It's sort of new. Firms don't really understand that. What does it mean to us? What does that mean to our clients? What does that mean to the firm? And so helping to understand it, helping to understand how firms think about it, helping to understand how firms are moving down this path and having successes, I think it's just going to help, to your point, help firms survive and thrive, because it's been a tough year, and I feel like this year is still really tough. And I mean, you can share what you're seeing out there, because you're talking to firms every day like I am. I mean, what is weighing on everyone's hearts and minds right now? What are you seeing?
It's really the staffing. Resoundingly, it's the staffing. And how do we fix this? And it's not just it's not the fact that we can't find staff or we can't get staff. It's how to retain the staff that we have now. And I think people don't realize that part of retaining their staff now is making their work more meaningful and making them feel like they're not stuck doing all this mundane busy work. Because if I'm spinning and I'm the hamster on the wheel, I'm not having that sense of accomplishment that I've done something. And it's not just 1 year, it's really been 2 years, or at least a year and a half if we think about the start of the pandemic. So we've all been churning on this hamster wheel for this long. And if you're not getting that sense of accomplishment or some type of endpoint, or I've made a difference, like that to me is what causes staff to leave. So if you can fix that problem, and again, even if it's just like, let's just get each other some time to breathe.
I agree.
And really, like, take that step back, not just from what's going on, but from work as a whole, and go, okay, now I can refocus. Now I can do things because you freed up the time for them to be human again.
Right, I agree. That's kind of why I'm here at Botkeeper, because I feel like, all the research I see is that AI makes people happier because they're able to, one, take a breather, take a break, right? You're freeing them up from doing the stuff that is just time consuming, not profitable. And two, that allows them to enjoy more time with their family, enjoy their job more, but then also enjoy their clients more. Letting them talk to they're all going, I feel like firms go into this business because they care about the small business. And so if you give them time to talk to the business owner about their business, that makes people enjoy their job more. And in my traveling the last week, I heard a lot of keynotes, and you're right, staffing was the #1 thing on everyone's hearts and minds that I've been hearing as well. I heard 70% of the people leaving are not going to another firm. So they're leaving the profession. And that scared me, right? What are you seeing leaders do now? Like, can you give some tricks? We've got 2 minutes left, that leaders can do now.
So first, I think it comes back to this whole conversation. It's focus on people. So you need to focus on your people and figure out how can you have the best impact on your people. And the second one is really everything that we've been thinking about. You need to look at the opportunity, because it's automation or outsourcing. If our profession actually finished embracing a lot of these things, which automation has been around, especially in the accounting space. So the automations have been around, but we haven't seen firms adopt. Get the automation in, reduce your people needs. Secondly, get rid of the non-value added mundane work, outsource that, so that then your talent really focuses on what makes a difference. And it's that difference that they make, that impact that they can have to the client, that makes the work meaningful. Then they won't leave, then you won't have to recruit as much, because less work, you can get the same work done with the same amount of people, and you won't have to replace people that are leaving.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear. Thank you, Donny. I'm watching the time. We've got 1 minute left, and I'd love for you to share 2 things. We're coming out with a white paper, so share that, and also share how firms that are interested in working with you, how they can get in touch with you.
So we're going to have the 8 keys to bookkeeping, automation, and outsourcing that'll be coming out. with that. It'll be tied also with the research, so have a way for you all to sign up to be on that part of that research study or to get the results. And then the very last thing, if you're interested in talking to me more, I'm also love to talk about this stuff. The easiest way to get in touch with me is email. It's Donny, D-O-N-N-Y, at Intraprise, INTRAPRISE.US.
Great. Thanks so much, Donny. I appreciate your time today. It's a hot topic, and I think we've got a lot to think about here, a lot to learn here, but I really think firms need to just get started. They can't wait anymore to have it all figured out. And clearly there's folks like you that can help and companies like Botkeeper that can help, but they've just gotta, they can't not do it anymore. They can't ignore it. Like something's gotta change.
Well, and like you said, this is on the edge, and we need to jump off the edge. We need to like get through this and work our way.
I love it. That's right. All right, Donny, thanks. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.